Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I am your host, JC Granger, and I have another fantastic guest with us on the show today. And listen, if you end up loving this episode, please show your love and appreciation by following this podcast wherever it is that you're listening, and be sure to give it a 5-star rating, hopefully with some nice comments on there, because that is how techies like you and me can find podcasts like this. So today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the COO of Nobl9, Kit Merker. Kit, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what does Nobl9 do? Who do they do it for?
Hey, JC, thanks. Great to be here. Well, let's see. I've been in the software business a little bit too long, like 20 years. And Nobl9 is really all about making it so that software teams can make better decisions about reliability. And I don't know about you, but whenever I use software, it doesn't always work 100% of the time.
Oh, no, mine always works, 100%.
Well,
no failures, no downtime, no bugs. No, we're perfect.
You might have the magic touch, right? So whether you're, streaming a video or trying to upload your check to your bank account, or if you're trying to order food, and actually it's crazy because all of us are so dependent on software now. We use it for everything from how we eat, how we do money, how we find love. It's all software. And it doesn't work 100% of the time, and that's because it can't. And so what we try to do at Nobl9 is we made a set of tools that help you embrace failure, help you manage the risk, so it doesn't actually completely ruin your day, but helps you decide which things you need to pay attention to and which things you can ignore. And that's helping software teams sleep better at night and run their operations in a way that makes their customers happy. So that's the mission we're on. It's something I've been passionate about for a long time, and it's really cool to have a company completely focused on it.
So let's talk about real case use, right? So first of all, who's like your perfect client? Like of all because we have a lot of techies that listen, a lot of software companies and things like that. So which segment of our audience do you think is like, oh yeah, I mean, this would make my life so much better, right? And then after you answer that, then it's, give us let's paint the picture of what it would be like to actually utilize what you guys have and how it would help them.
Sure. Well, the people who use it or benefit the most are people who are carrying the pager or dealing with the fact that their software is unreliable. The people who are, basically trying to make sure that the system's up and running, and when it isn't, then it interrupts their life. I call the industries the downtime equals dollars industries. So we've been helping out a lot of financial services companies. If the market's open, their software needs to work, right? Or if they're dealing with customers, retailers and e-commerce. If you can go buy from somebody else, right? Video streaming, media companies, communications companies, video games is a really big segment for us. So basically, yeah, anywhere where the software being down or your system or your cloud being down equals dollars for you, this is where the benefit is. In terms of the before and after, life without Nobl9, basically what it looks like is you're either ignoring problems that are facing customers, and you're finding out about it too late, and you're kind of in a reactive mode, or in other cases, you're too proactive. Think about where, the pager goes off, it wakes you up to go look at something, and by the time you get to the, log in and check out the server, it's already recovered. And that feeling of frustration that a lot of engineers face, they're having to build their software. And then for the people who are maybe less on the technical side, but on the business side, their frustration comes because their engineers keep telling them they got to re-architect, refactor, pay down technical debt, do all this other work. And the product managers, the business stakeholders, well, what do they want to do? They want to ship features, right? They want to get more customers. They want to get more new capabilities out to the market, right? And so that's where their frustration comes in. What we do after you deploy Nobl9, you get your first service level objective. That's really what our system's all about, service level objectives. Once you have these goals set up, what it lets you do is balance between focusing on fixing your reliability issues or shipping features. Helps you focus on, staying asleep versus responding. And these goals, it's really just a matter of understanding all the different systems relative to reasonable goals for the service. And by having that in place, everybody kind of gets to relax. And that's I think the biggest thing. You can refocus your energy on the productive work that you want to do as opposed to fixing all the broken stuff.
So we know what you do, but how do you do it? Like, for example, I mean, software engineers and people own software companies, for example, too, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what our goal is too. So how are you doing what they can't do? Why is it that, how is engaging with Nobl9 ensure that they don't have that downtime? Like what are you actually doing for them? Whether it's been integration, is it like a redundancy kind of, backup system that can jump in, or, I mean, what is it? How are you doing it? How are you saving their life from downtime?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. So the interesting thing about it is no one can guarantee a lack of downtime. In fact, quite the opposite. In fact, the trick to the whole game is instead of defining reliability goals, what we do is we set unreliability goals. Okay. So if you think of it as, instead of saying, I want something to, work at least 99.9% of the time, we say, well, 0.1% of error is acceptable. It's an unreliability goal. Okay. And that means that overachieving the goal is actually a bad thing as well. And what that lets you do is to define an acceptable amount of error and then engineer your system for that. And there's all kinds of interesting engineering techniques, which I won't bore people with, but, kind of summarizing, right? You can add caching so that you're not dependent on external systems. You can add queues so that you can keep track of the work that needs to be done and process it as it's available. You can add retry logic with exponential backoff. So try it every hour or try it every second and then go to a minute and then to an hour. And the retries don't add up to more load on the system. These techniques can be put in place if you understand the reliability characteristics of the different parts of the system. Okay. So what you're really doing is defining the goal, not just looking at the data, because the data is meaningless, right? I have all this monitoring data. And I'm staring at, we call it watching the Matrix. Remember from the Matrix where he's like staring at the green
all
stuff?
the
Yeah.
on the screen. Yeah.
We don't need a better dashboard, okay? What we need is a system where it has a defined goal. And then if it looks like that goal is at risk, then we alert automation and try to recover. Maybe we throw more servers at the problem. Maybe we wake up a team. And by having that defined, written down goal as part of the code, right? It's actually encoded in the application. The system can be engineered to be more resilient. Now, we didn't invent this set of practices, this whole service level objective, error budgeting, resiliency, reliability engineering. This has been developed at big software companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon, et cetera. All we've really done is productized it. We've turned it into something that any organization can adopt very quickly. We've based it on open source standards. We've made it very intuitive to use. We've made it integrate with all these different places in the market. So yeah, it's not a magic wand, just like, the fad diet or gym membership isn't going to make everything magically better, but it gives you a framework and a set of tools that makes your efforts much more predictable and much more likely to succeed.
So which types of software companies are or any kind of, company in that space, like who does this benefit the most? I mean, is it like server farms? Is it social media companies? Is it like MarTech, like financial systems? I mean, instead of saying all of them, like give us like one good example of like, hey, listen, this company we worked with or this type of company we worked with, their systems do this and this and this. So any downtime cost, I mean, we're talking Wall Street, like, who does this really help the most because it costs them the most when it goes bad?
Yeah, well, and getting into some specific-ish examples. Unfortunately, I'm not really in a position to disclose who some of the customers are, but some of the use cases I think are really interesting. Like, let's say you were doing high-frequency trading. You're watching the stock market and placing trades, and you're doing that with a very, very high frequency. And what that means is that if your system goes down while that's occurring, and it doesn't have to be fully down, even a small, 50%. 30% delay to the latency of that system could have a massive impact on millions, if not billions of dollars, right? There can be a huge amount of impact because you miss the opportunity and the opportunity doesn't resume, right? And so this is where when you're designing the system, you need to think about all the contingencies that would equal that risk. But guess what? We all have limited resources. Even if you're a giant financial institution, you only have so much time in the day to build software, to build infrastructure. So you need a way of prioritizing. And this is really what it comes down to, setting these goals, these service level objectives, SLOs. They really set prioritization. So you can say, you know what, given the challenge, do this and not that, because it's going to have a bigger financial impact for us. I was actually talking to a site reliability engineer at a hedge fund, and he told me that there are basically two SLOs. When the market's open, it needs to be 100%. When the market's closed, it can be 0%. And that's kind of the way to think about the reliability, is that it's not the same at all times. Some retailers we work with, guess what? Black Friday, the holiday period, significantly more important than the rest of the year. So instead of saying, the system needs to be up at the same level all year, instead, you want to recognize their seasonality, right? That certain days and certain transactions are more important than others. Another great example from the retail space, imagine you've got a website where you can buy some shoes. You like shoes?
I love shoes.
Yeah, there you go.
I use them every day.
You use them every day, exactly. Some people like to go barefoot. Now. Yeah, wearing them right now. So think about this. You're clicking on the catalog, right? You're clicking on the catalog looking for what shoes you want to buy, okay? And then you have this other click, this special click where you actually purchase the shoes, right? If you put all those clicks into one big jumble of data, you're going to see the catalog clicks, which is a high volume but low value clicks, right? If the catalog doesn't work, you'll click it again. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, if you click the checkout button and it doesn't work, it's a very low volume, relatively speaking, right? You might do 100 clicks on the catalog for every one click at checkout.
But it's a high value.
But super high value. Well, guess what? If you put that all into one set of data and you set a goal for the whole thing, you're going to overbuild the catalog and you're going to underbuild the checkout, right? So that. You get the point? So what we do is we help you divide that into two different sets. We say, hey, you know what? Catalog clicks go over here, and we set a specific goal on the speed and the reliability of that. You know, what percentage of the time it has to work. The checkout, we set a different goal and we separate it. Now, as an engineer looking at the system, I can see these two piles of clicks, right? I can understand them relative to the goal. And if there's a bug, I can prioritize which one to fix. This is what's so important, is bringing this level of understanding and also connecting it back to the business and the user, the customer, right? How do we know what's going to cause the customer to complain in the forums? I'll give you another great example. There's a particular gaming company which offered a free user experience and a paid user experience. And they wanted to separate between the free and the paid so that they could create a better experience for the paying customers, get them connected to the servers and everything in a much more reliable way, and encourage the free users to upgrade. By managing it with SLOs, they can define these different populations, right? They can define the goals for those populations, and they can set an experience based on, you know, the number of servers and the application that drives the right behavior from those end users, right? So all of this is about connecting the software systems back to the business, right? Back to the things that actually drive happiness, loyalty, upsell, conversion, retention, right? All those things that matter to business users.
Yeah.
It's all exactly right. It's all about the user experience and also about the gross margins. Because if we all go try to build the perfect software system, it's incredibly expensive, expensive, right? So this is really, hopefully this kind of makes sense. The people who benefit from this concept are struggling with this issue where they've got really tough decisions to make, right? They've got competing priorities. They've got business stakeholders who say, I want it to be perfect. We got to make it completely secure. It can't ever go down. And they're going, well, wait a second. At some point, I got to make some trade-offs, right? At some point, I got to decide, look, do you need the system to work like Black Friday level every day of the year, really? Or can we maybe save ourselves some money by not building it for those times and reinvest that energy into the times that really matter, right?
Yeah, I like that too, because you can reroute funds where it's necessary, when it's necessary.
Exactly.
You're right. If it's a blanket statement, you know, you're bleeding cash, you don't even know it, you know? So I like that. And for the audience, just in case some people don't know what SLO stands for.
Service level objective, okay? And it's similar, people are familiar with service level agreements, okay? SLA is a really common thing. An SLO is similar to an SLA, but it has a couple of key differences, okay? The key difference between an SLA and an SLO is that the SLO actually has two goals built into it instead of one. An SLA says, I must be at least this good, right? Hey, I got to get the pizza to the house within 30 minutes or your money back. That's an SLA. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Well, what if the pizza comes within 30 seconds? It's within the SLA, right? It's bad for business. What if I design my pizza delivery company to always deliver pizzas within 30 seconds when the SLA is 30 minutes?
Sure.
I would be overspending. I'd be I'd be building pizza places every 2 blocks, right? It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
So what we do instead is we say, look, if I want it to within 30 minutes, well, it's really between 30 and 25 minutes, right? Between 25 and 30 minutes is what we would do with an SLO. We'd actually define like what slightly overachieving it looks like. And that the gap, you know, between perfection and that number, we call it an error budget. It's the amount of error, the problem that we're anticipating. It's the risk that we're accepting in the service. And we know that if we set it correctly, we're not going to lose customers. If I give you a 30-minute guarantee, I don't have to deliver within 30 seconds to keep the business, right? And by the way, even at 35 minutes, I got to weigh out. If I come in at 25 minutes every time, maybe I'm cutting it close, but I can run a business effectively, right? Yeah. This is the idea of the SLO. It's about setting a goal that both comes from the bottom, it must be at least this good, and from the top, where it should not exceed this level of goodness.
So it sounds like, you know, you've got that old saying of it's a game of inches, but it sounds like what you're doing, it's a game of millimeters. You know, like that short, like every little bit counts. And, you know, And that's kind of the way I see this of what you guys do. You made a game of inches into a game of millimeters to optimize for optimization.
That's a great way to. I never heard of it that way before, but I
Look at
like
that.
it.
That's free.
It's like,
That's free.
yeah, I like that one. That's great.
That's your one-liner. We're recording this, so you got this.
That's great. That's great. I'm gonna keep it.
And well, on that note, I'm such a marketing guy, right? That's how I see everything, the lens, because I've had my agency for about over 11 years now. So let me ask you the next question, which is, it sounds like you guys got a really specific, great system in place for, software engineers, data farms, maybe, software companies. How are you getting the word out? What are you doing for your own marketing? For the audience listening, what have you done that's worked? What have you done that maybe didn't work? People kind of piece that together and kind of helps them figure out maybe what they could do.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that when you're marketing to developers, I feel like it's a very specific challenge. Okay, there's a few interesting challenges with developers. I don't know if you've worked with developers. I used to be one. They're very cynical. They want the facts. They want to know what's really going on. And they have very low tolerance for BS. Okay, right. This is
no
the first
fluff.
thing. No fluff.
Give me the stats. It's a very logical process with most of them anyway.
And at the same time, what's interesting is that every engineer I know is interested in learning. They're interested in problem solving, and they're interested in building relationships. And so what that leads us to is actually building community. Building technical community. And that's where we focused, I would say the vast majority of our, quote unquote, marketing efforts has been on building a community around this practice of SLOs, not the company Nobl9, but the practice of SLOs. And also the broader set of practices around site reliability engineering, or SRE. Okay, and this is the discipline that we mostly work with. So we created a SRE meetup, which has grown now to over, I think it's just shy of 800 members worldwide. We meet monthly. Started at 0 about a year and a half ago, and started in Seattle pre-pandemic, and it's really grown into something pretty phenomenal. And we've got great diversity in the group, people from all over the world. We have try to do 50-50 gender balance for all of our talks. A really cool group there, and some great leaders that are helping organize and run that. So that was one big thing we've done, is built that group, and it's all about understanding reliability, understanding the practices and challenges and cases of that. We also launched an online event called SLO Conf, or SLO Conf, and that ended up being a much bigger thing than we expected, and it's at sloconf.com. And I was just literally today asked if we were going to do it again next year, and I hope we will. We're trying to figure out if we can do it, if there's an in-person version or an online version of it. But we had 50 speakers, 7 hours of content, over 1,000 people, 1,000 hours viewed that content, 2,400 people showed up to the event. Just an amazingly engaging experience, and we had just such a fun time doing it. Oh, not to mention the 17 sponsors and the media coverage and everything else we got. So really nice. A cool thing we've done there. And it's interesting is that if you go on a journey of learning and educating with the people in your community, inevitably, they start to come to trust that maybe you know what you're doing and that you can build a software product that solves their problems. And if you're not pushy about it, and they come to you and they say, I think we're ready, right? We've been studying these practices. We've been trying to figure out if it's going to work for us. We think it makes sense. And now we're ready to get some, professional help to deploy the platform and get things up and running. And that to me is a very, very honest, fair way to build the relationship, is to kind of lead it through education. We do some of the traditional marketing stuff. We buy some search ads here and there, and we have some webinars and things like that. But, especially during pandemic, the thing that has been the biggest has been content and community. And the virtual events are tough to do. When they're done in a way that's really about learning and connecting, it works pretty well. So,
well, that's really cool, especially that community building part there, because a lot of people, they look at marketing as very one-dimensional. They think it's just ads, or it's just blogs, or SEO, or emails and stuff like that. Yeah. And what people don't realize is you can have the outreach, but you want to, and that's one side. You have to, because you got to get eyeballs on it, right? But when they get the eyeballs, they got to have something to look at, right? That's right. You got to have a good quality thing to look at once you get their attention. And it sounds like you've gotten that part, so that's really cool. So the future biz tech being the title of this podcast, so we're gonna ask a 2-part question here. First part is, where's Nobl9 going in the next, 6 months, a year, 2 years? Is there any cool features coming out, any inside scoop that my audience can get? And then also on top of that, where, no company is completely original, in my opinion. So I know you have competitors. So between you and all your competitors as an industry of what you do, where do you see the industry going in that kind of 5 to 10 year mark? Do you see any advanced, AI or any other, or shifts in the market that are going to affect it? So where's Nobl9 going in the short term, and where is the industry going in the long term?
Well, I'm not supposed to talk about our short-term roadmap, but I'm going to anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's so exciting. Well, one of the things about Nobl9 and what we're doing right now is we've spent the last bit here getting all the integrations, and this has been such a big part of our platform. Is that we know, especially in the software industry, no company can exist on their own. We have to fit into the developer's existing tool set. How they check in their code, how they collect their monitoring metrics, and so we've been building a lot of those data integrations and partnerships. Well, now we've gotten to a point where we have so much data. We've built a new capability that will be launching relatively soon. I don't think I'm allowed to say the name of it, but essentially what it lets you do is take all the data from these source systems and auto-generate reasonable SLOs from the data. It lets you take the existing data as you have it and use that as a starting point, so you don't have to invent your own goals. It says, hey, look, you've been able to perform at this level. We're going to go ahead and make that your starting point goal, and you can refine it over time, make it better, or maybe loosen that goal if you've been overachieving or getting lucky, which is usually what happens. And that's going to make productivity go through the roof for taking especially large organizations that have hundreds or thousands of different services and developers, make it so they can get started super fast. Right now, developers get up and running in about 10 minutes on Nobl9, and if we can do that across a whole organization and have them set up their reliability environment quickly, I think it could be a game changer. So that's one thing we're working on right now.
That's cool. Okay, so here's something and tell me if this is the right analogy to this. So I keep seeing these Domino's commercials coming out. They have this new thing. So Domino's, I
got you thinking about pizza.
Yeah, you did, because I'm hungry now too. I want pizza. But I remember, I believe it was Domino's who did this originally. I could be wrong, but back like in the 80s, it was that whole famous, we'll have it to your door in 30 minutes or it's free, right?
Yep.
And that was something they had to create, and there was times, that was a big marketing campaign, and they did the math and they said, listen, we're going to probably end up having to refund X amount of pizzas, but this marketing campaign will get so many people ordering based on that they'll make up for it, right? That was their plan. Now, they eventually stopped that at some point, but it went on for years, right? It was like a whole thing. And now no pizza company does it really, but everyone still says that because it's such a famous tagline.
That's right.
Now Domino's has this thing where I saw them come back into this, where they said basically curbside pickup. You pull up, and the second you pull up and you hit on the app that you're there, that if it's not in your hands within 2 minutes, from that they will come out and bring it to you within 2 minutes, then it's or your next pizza's free, right? Here's my question with what you do. This new feature coming out, is it safe to say that it's this kind of technology that would allow a smaller company than Domino's with all their resources, or even just big ones like Domino's or other companies, where your algorithm could say, listen, here's the window of which this is actually viable. Like the software would have told them 2 minutes is, from all the data we have, you need at least 2 minutes to get out there so that you're not taking this hit if you're going to give them their next pizza for free. Like, is it your software and what's coming out, the ability to take the data and spit out, like you said, a service level operation, or not operation, I'm sorry.
Objective.
Thank you.
Yep.
Where it could have been the one to tell them, rather than having to spend all this time, money experimenting, because they probably experimented in these little test markets, right? And they probably lost some money here, they probably made some money there until they figured it out. But your software could literally tell them that almost on the spot. Is that kind of what you're going for here?
You got it. I mean, maybe not for the pizza delivery scenario, but if you had a system and you were asking yourself a question like, okay, well, maybe we think we need 5 nines or 4 nines, and people throw around these big numbers, but if we just look at the data you have and we say, hey, look, make it as good as it's been historically. Make that the goal. Just set up starting point. That's exactly what we're trying to do here, so that you can look at the data, and we can look at the data for you and just generate the starting point SLOs. And then you can make it better from there. In this pizza example, it'd be like, hey, somebody has this harebrained idea, this 2-minute, campaign. They run the data and they go, oh, I think we can only really guarantee 5 minutes. Or we could even say, maybe a better way to put it, right, with the SLO concept, it's really a percentage. You say, oh, well, 1 out of 1,000 is going to happen within 5 minutes, and 1 out of 100 we can get done within longer than 2 minutes, right? You can start to see the bell curve, right? Because really what you want to understand is the customer experience in a statistical way. It's not about one customer's experience of 2 minutes. It's what percentage of the time can we meet that goal?
Yeah, and what acceptability is there of not meeting it and having to give away that free next pizza, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You got it. This is exactly the concept of being able to understand what is a reasonable level of customer service, and we do it in a digital context. So if you think about it as, hey, I want to see how long should somebody have to wait in the lobby before they get added to this multiplayer game? How long should it take to upload a mobile check and get the cash into your bank account? How long before the email from your trade confirmation shows up, right? Sure. How long should it take to price the discounts on my shopping bag full of clothes on a retailer website, right? All of these scenarios are what we're talking about here. And we're just going to make it easier to understand, not based on guesswork or wishful thinking, but actually based on the data, right? Which is what we want, ultimately what we're going to do. So
that's really cool. So I'm going to ask a question that I usually ask in the beginning, but I am curious. You're the COO. Yeah. Are you one of the founders? And if not, or even if so, what was your motivation to either join the company or start the company?
Well, I'm technically not a founder, but I kind of get to say I'm like employee one. Some people think I'm the third founder, which is kind of fun. But I've known the founders for many years, and I had originally planned to join a little bit later, but I came in pretty much right at the beginning. Look, I had worked at Google. I worked as a product manager there. I understood how the operations worked there. I worked at Microsoft, and I wasn't totally happy with how we did software operations there. And from being in that space for so long and seeing how people struggle to run their software in a reliable way, their cloud infrastructure, their applications, their mobile apps, it's so challenging and it's so important. And so much of it has to do with not setting good goals. And when the idea of this company was really about taking this tried and true method that we saw in these big cloud companies like Google and make it so it was super simple, that it was an easy user experience, it would fit into the way that enterprise developers worked, that would take all the math and just hide it. Just hide all the math so people can click some check boxes and guess what? All the math just happens, right? Just make it easy. And that concept to me became really, really powerful. And then on top of that, my experience doing developer community, working on Kubernetes and those kinds of projects when I was at Google, I love building developer community. I love working with developers. I love helping them adopt new ways of doing things. And to me, being able to do that was a really exciting part of the job. So that's really, to me, I mean, you can tell I'm super excited by it. It's like building companies from nothing. It's a fun and sometimes stressful thing, but it's really rewarding. Going back to your question, though, about where the industry's going, because this is an interesting angle, too. Okay. Yeah. So
I always like to know, like, just that long term, like just what's that massive shift? Where do you see it? See any new technology popping up? And, what do you think is going to happen?
I think there's a paradox. This is actually, to me, is one of the most interesting parts of this puzzle. And I think it applies more broadly because you're asking about AI, for example, right? Sure. There's this problem, this technology space we call AI ops, right? Which you hear a lot of people talking about. And this idea that you're going to hand over your software operations to robots, essentially, to AI, okay? Sure. And one of the things that I'm always intrigued with is this thing called the paradox of automation. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I'll explain it very briefly. So paradox of automation says that the more you automate some process, the less humans are involved. Makes sense. However, when the humans are involved, the criticality of their involvement increases. What does this mean? You're driving in a self-driving car. Everything's good, right? You're on autopilot. It's great. You're not involved in the driving process, right? Until what is it? The harvest moon shows up and the car doesn't know what it is, or the truck pulls out in front of you, or something happens, you got to grab the wheel. So you're less involved, which is great. However, your criticality of involvement goes up to a point where you can have very severe incidents. The same thing happens in our software infrastructure, in our data centers and cloud computing, all this other stuff. And so when we think about automation and we think about artificial intelligence, I think it's really important to put it in the context of the humans in control and having awareness of how the system works. And there's a difference between delegating understanding the system versus delegating the authority over the system. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the challenges that everybody in this space, whether you call it DevOps, site reliability engineering, observability, all of these different areas that are, some amazing companies growing in this space, is if they lean too far toward artificial intelligence in the sense of giving authority, as opposed to giving artificial intelligence to help the humans, right, build better systems and automation. So the struggle that's in front of us, and it's going to apply to us, it's going to apply to our competitors and our integration partners and other people, and most importantly to our customers, because a lot of our customers are on this mindset that I got to automate everything. Sure. Right? I got to automate everything because I got all these people and I got my cloud operations and everything's got to be automated and the people can go focus on higher level tasks, right? This is what the mindset is. And I think that's true to a point. But there's a limit, and there's a limit to how much software can really help us if we don't ingrain in our mindset that we have to have the visibility, the control, the power. It has to lie with the humans who ultimately, the software is here to serve us, not the other way around, right? So
Sure.
I guess that's my dystopian future kind of view.
Yeah.
I don't want to give the power to Skynet, right?
Yeah, I was literally just gonna say until Skynet takes over, in which case we have a whole different issue on our hands. So it's all
exactly. Let's not have that happen. Yeah.
Last question for you. If you could pick one book that you've read or listened to that you think is an absolute must read for technology or anything else, what would it be? What book could the audience go pick up that you're just like, you've got to read that book?
Two books popped in my head, if that's all right. The one book that, as a marketer, I think the book Obviously Awesome by April Dunford is probably one of the best books on marketing that I have personally ever read. And it completely changed my point of view on how to position Nobl9. And she also, does speak quite a bit about tech stuff too, which, in marketing books, it's kind of rare. But the one that I was thinking, so that's my very practical one. The other one I was thinking about though, and I always talk about this with my CTO, Alex Nauta, is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And the reason why is that book to me is about the journey for quality. And to me, this is when you look at the higher level pursuits, there's practical stuff, but when you really think about the bigger picture here of how we want to build businesses and build quality into our systems and software into our systems, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance to me may have inspired and challenged me more than any other book I've ever read about the idea of the pursuit of quality. So there you go.
That sounds like something that Harley Davidson would have inspired, because they started off, they got so big from World War II actually by making their bikes not only quality, but easy to work on in the field. Right. And that's really what separated them from the competition for getting those military contracts was, they're like, listen, this is so easy. We can literally show your people how to do this if something breaks down out there. Because all the other ones before, you had to contract them to come out and fix it. And it's like, that ain't going to work on the front line. No one's putting in an order and someone going to come up with a toolbox. It's like, we got to do this here. So that's interesting though. I like that. I'll have to check that one out. So how can people find you guys online? How can they reach out to you specifically, Kit, if they have some higher level deal or question?
Well, we're at nobl9.com. And I mentioned slowconf, slowconf.com, SLO@CONF.com. Slowconf is our conference. I'm on Twitter at Kit Merker. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. But yeah, come check us out, nobl9.com, and you can sign up for a trial, and we'd be happy to give you a tour of the product if you want to see how it works. And
it's Nobl with no E, right? Nobl and then the number 9, correct?
That's right, but if you put in the E, you'll find us anyway.
Oh, okay, so you bought the domain. That's smart. That's smart. Well, listen, for everyone out there listening, again, if you liked what you heard today, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Give it a 5-star rating. Put some cool comments in with it so other techies like us can find it and we can learn about all these amazing softwares and services that are out there on the market today, and specifically the inside scoop, which we were able to pull out of Kit today. So thank you, Kit, so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to speaking with you soon again, sir.
Thanks, JC. It was a lot of fun.
Bye.